We are back on Taking Care of Business on Koerner Radio, News Talk, 1180, 1230 KGEO, 1410 KERI, and now in Albuquerque, New Mexico on 1000 KKIM. So, Clay, what do you think of Vince Coakley?
Vince has some interesting opinions. You know, I'm sort of on the liberal side, so I can't agree with everything he said.
Any second now, the ceiling's going to open up and you're going to be gone.
Hit with lightning.
Lightning's going to strike.
I like Vince. I'm looking forward to talking to him again.
Yeah, and you know, he was very diplomatic about the fact that, I mean, the bottom line is he was a conservative on a liberal network, and they wanted to go another direction, and they fired him. So a black conservative getting fired by a liberal network, that's kind of a, you know, interesting twist on things, isn't it?
Well, that's because he's a black conservative.
That's true. That's true.
And I didn't even know that until you just told me.
You didn't know that?
No.
You did a lot of research on this, Clay, I can tell.
Did, yeah.
Yeah, boy.
You saw my page of notes.
Yes, I did see your page of notes. I did that to you last week. I asked you 3 questions and you were done. That's when you decided to take a nap.
Take a nap.
Well, listen, before we introduce our guests, I want to tell you a little short story. 5 short years after the end of World War II, you remember that time, Clay, the Cold War broke into its first real confrontation between the superpowers. Russia and China backing the North Koreans, and the West led by the United States backing the South Koreans. 60 years ago, this year, 1953, an armistice, not a final peace. There's never really been peace declared in Korea, but an armistice was declared ending the hostilities in the Korean War. Our next guest was invited by her father's Korean War veterans post to attend the anniversary services in Korea. Our guest in studio, a friend of mine, Alonna Moreno. Alonna, welcome to Taking Care of Business.
Well, thank you for having me today.
Well, you know, at our B&I group, you told this story, and it was very touching for me.
What's
because
a B&I group?
Well, do you want to get into that? Okay. Well, Alonna, explain B&I.
Well, you said at our B&I group, but I don't know what that is.
Okay, explain
well,
B&I.
is a referral organization, but we've been around since 1985. We're in all 50 states, in 50 countries, and it's a networking organization. I'm very proud to be the area director for the Southern Central Valley, and I've been doing this now for 8 years.
And you do a great job.
I really enjoy helping people take their business to the next level.
Mm-hmm. And it's a good way to get referrals. So, hey, that was nice of you, Clay, to give her a plug like that.
Well, if I didn't know what it was, I'm sure a lot of our listeners didn't know what it was either.
That's true. I mean, as intelligent as you are and as well-versed as you are, if you didn't know, our listeners wouldn't know.
Thank you, Marty.
He's very astute.
Yeah. Now Clay's going to have to look up astute. And Clay, treasure this moment. I can't remember the last time I gave you a compliment on the air. It's a rare moment.
Thank you, Marty.
We should have quit while we were ahead, right?
Back to Korea. Let's go back to Korea.
It was a touching moment for me because you and I ended up in tears at the time. You had just came back from Korea, and I had just came back from Canada, and my dad, who's now starting to suffer from Alzheimer's, was involved in the Korean War. And I remember 2 days before you spoke, I was in his office, and he had all of his medals from Korea and from the Korean organizations that he was involved in, you know, until fairly recently. So it's a touchy subject for both of us, and that's one reason why I wanted to have you on, is because we really haven't done anything about Korea, and it's not one of those wars that people really talk about.
I know. I mean, I was almost embarrassed when I went, not really totally understanding what took place.
Sure.
And I'm thinking maybe our schools aren't educating well enough as far as what the impact the U.S. had on us being a part of it, but the whole conflict itself being recognized in history books.
Sure. Now, I was in Canada, as I said, and I was in Victoria, and they had a war memorial there specifically designed for Korean veterans. There was one in Vancouver. So, you know, Canadians tend to be a little more, I think it's because of the ties with the English, they tend to be a little more memorials and more ceremonial when it comes to this type of thing, and we just kind of tend to go the other way. You know, I mean, we just got our World War II memorial a couple of years ago, and that war has been over for, 70 years.
Well, I mean, it's interesting. My dad would even say there's times where he felt that the Korean War was just pushed under the rug to a certain extent. And it was awesome to see these veterans that maybe some of them left 60 years ago, have never been back, and the honor they received from the Koreans was very touching.
Now, why did you go on this trip? What constitutes a reason for you to be there?
I had the awesome privilege. The Korean War post down in Imperial Valley. It's in the southernmost part of California. They were contacted by the the Korean Church in Korea, Seoul, Korea, and there's also a Korean church there, and they were wanting to honor the veterans, and so between all the relationships and so forth, they were able to host the Korean War veterans and a family member. And my mom went instead of my father because he passed away 2.5 years ago, and she was able to bring a friend with her. And then there was a couple gentlemen that were Korean War veterans that didn't have family that could go with them, so my sister and I were their family and got to go and be with them. So I was very honored to have that privilege.
Our guest in studio, an attendee of the 60th anniversary services ending the Korean War, Alonna Moreno.
Now, I know you went to a lot of cities while you were there. One of those was Seoul, I'm sure.
Yes.
But did you go throughout the whole country, or just the southern part, or whereabouts?
We went all the way up to the DMZ zone, the demilitarized zone. We were on tour buses. I mean, we had military police stopping the traffic for our buses and so forth. And we went all the way up to the DMZ zone. And in fact, I was in North Korea for probably 3 to 5 minutes.
Wow.
When we were there. So, yeah.
You didn't get arrested, huh?
No, we were actually in a safe place as far as they have there at the actual border. They have 2 buildings that they allow where the North Koreans and South Koreans can meet, or if the South Koreans have visitors, they can actually go into these buildings and vice versa. And it was really interesting to see. They have, of course, the military guard that's there to protect the lines.
Right.
But we got to go into this one room. It's called the map room. And when we walked around the conference table, we were then all in North Korea.
Now, when you say the DMZ, that stands for the Demilitarized Zone.
That's correct.
Which is the border between South and North Korea. And basically, that's a live war zone because you've got troops sitting there on either side, and that's one of those borders that could erupt at any time.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Now, was this real emotional for the guys that went?
It was quite emotional. In fact, some of the gentlemen would kind of become quiet after they would visit some of these areas. There was one gentleman that was from Turkey, and not that he spoke English, but you could just see by the raw emotions that he would have that there was times that he wouldn't even want to participate in some, especially there at the DMZ zone. He became very angry by his actions, and I didn't know at that point in time why it was. It wasn't until later that I learned why he was so emotional at that point in time.
Now, when you were at the DMZ, did you actually see the North Korea soldiers and the South Korea soldiers?
We did see their South Korean soldiers. There's a particular group that are specifically assigned to the DMZ zone, especially the facility we were at. And when we were standing on the South Korean side, we could look up at the buildings and see the North Koreans watching us. So we had to watch no hand gestures, not even scratching your nose, whatever the case may be, or saying hi to somebody, because of the fact that we didn't want to cause the North Koreans to think we're doing something.
So they restricted you to that point?
Yeah.
Wow.
My sister and I are thinking, what if our nose itches? I mean,
yeah.
Good thing they didn't have an auction.
Now, someone I know who was at the border was telling me that I guess there's structures on the North Korean side that are really facades, but they're made to look like they're prosperous and things are going well. Do you know anything about that?
They did say that they try to make their buildings look like just as nice as the South Koreans. Mm-hmm. We did learn from just the course of information that was shared that the North Koreans, a lot of them work in factories, and they might have certain things paid for, but the final day, whatever was not paid for their, like housing or the case may be, they were given little whoopie pies. Mm-hmm. And that was their pay. And so the North Koreans go out and try to sell these whoopie pies to have additional money for food and all that kind of stuff.
What's a whoopie pie?
A whoopie pie is like our Hostess Twinkie type of pie, and they're individually wrapped. That's how they're paid.
Incredible. So they're not paid with any kind of money. That's the barter system, and the exchange is a whoopie pie.
Exactly. And they have 30-story buildings, mm-hmm. no elevators. And that's what they live in.
Wow. Incredible. When we come back, let's talk a little bit more about the trip and about some of the other things that you've seen.
Okay.
We'll be back in a moment on Taking Care of Business on Koerner Radio News Talk 1180.